Today's video is going to be how to look more expensive and just more polished put together in this not so simple but definitely accessible hack or DIY. We are going to be talking about fit and proportion. Those are the two most untalked about things in fashion that I can ever think of, and they make the biggest difference when you're getting dressed. The number one fit issue I see as a stylist is actually in your sleeves. Super random, I know, but most of the time your sleeves end up way down here where I'm at, because please note that I am quite tall, so my arms are quite long. I never have sleeves that are the right length. The right length for a long sleeve is right here at this bone. So not up here, you can see it right here. And I'm just lucky that I have bony hands, I guess. But if you are petite, then usually I see things that are way up here. Now, with a t-shirt, with a long sleeve shirt like the one I'm wearing, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. But where it does make a difference is with your outerwear. With your coats, this is going to be the make or break between a H&M coat looking like $54 and an H&M coat looking like $175 million. My sister-in-law is 5'4", and she has one of these H&M coats that was $54 like 6 or 7 years ago. And this season, when she put it on, I went, oh wow, that looks amazing. How did I never notice this coat before? She looked at me and she goes, girl, it was $54 from H&M. I have no idea. The thing that made her look expensive was the fit of the coat. And all she had done was bring up the sleeve length from hitting her about midway in her hands to up to where it's supposed to fit at her bone. When you are measuring though for your sleeve length, do not have your arms up like I have mine. You're going to want your arms down in what's called like a more natural or neutral position. So you don't want them straight because you almost never have your arms locked in straight. You want your arms kind of with a soft bend in there, and that is where you're going to measure for your sleeve length. Sleeve lengths are one of those ones that I usually don't recommend doing a DIY at home unless you have advanced sewing techniques, in which case you're probably not watching this video anyway. But if you happen to be, or if you happen to have a parent or a friend or someone who is decently good at sewing, this is where you're gonna pop them into the video and say, hey, I need you to help fix my sleeve length. Keep in mind that most jackets will have some sort of lining, no matter if they're fast fashion or slow fashion. So it makes things a little bit more challenging during the sewing process. Now, I mentioned H&M, and fast fashion is one of the most growing industries ever. And what's annoying about consumerism as a whole is that they keep getting worse. Years and years and years of just progressively getting a little bit worse to today, where fast fashion companies have outwardly said, we no longer fit anybody, which is their job. Their job as a clothing-based company is to sell clothing to the most amount of people as possible. And if you look around your community, your school, your church, whomever you're around, you're going to notice that almost nobody looks the same. So if you're in this community, your gym, wherever it is that you hang out, and you notice there's people who are 5'1", 6'1", there's people who are a range of sizes, range of shapes within those sizes, my question to you is, how can a clothing company, no matter how big, how small, fit everybody? And the answer is they can't. So that being said, and without throwing any one company under the bus, because our job here is not to judge them, is only to judge them a little bit on like certain practices, but not to judge them on the fit of their clothing. They're doing what they're doing. It is what it is. And the results are we're going to have to do what we do to feel good in our clothing. Their job is to sell clothing. Our job is to feel good in the clothing that we have and make sure that our personalities are coming through in how we choose to present ourselves. And that's all we can focus on right now. How and where you get your clothing is completely up to you. This is a YouTube channel. I'm not sitting in your room. Take it for what it was. So we already talked about sleeve lengths. We're going to talk about waists. Our natural waist, as much as all of the crop tops would like to say is up here, is not. And the easiest way to find your natural waist is to hinge. Now, of course, I'm wearing the widest, most comfy sweater in the world today, so you can't see it, but if you were to hinge over and put your hand where your waist is, that is your natural waist. Pretty simple, right? It's also could be about 2 fingers above your belly button, and that's where your natural waist is going to sit. Now, your waist is a line that we use in pattern making to help make clothing. It is not to say that it is the most flattering, which is just a horrible word in fashion that just means tall and thin. It is a line, just like your bust is a line. And that's what we're going to talk about is these lines. And this is the DIY that you can do at home to make your clothing feel like it fits your body a bit more. Now, I have some clothing examples from a client that I'm working with. This is one of them. You can tell that it's a clothing piece from about 5-10 years ago when this longer style was on trend. Now, she is of average height and naturally more of what we would call an hourglass figure, which just means that she has equal volume on top and the bottom. A way to emphasize and exaggerate her existing figure could be with a belt. You guys have all heard this. Just put a belt on it. Belts are a great piece when you really want to exaggerate things, but it's also the most uncomfortable thing you're ever going to wear in your entire life. You don't want to be walking around with a ginormous belt around your waist the whole time. Another way that we can do this is with the piece of clothing themselves. So what we are doing here, and you can tell that she likes this top, is she likes to color block her hourglass figure. Now, color blocking is just where you have one color on top and one color on the bottom. You can also do this with print. You can also do this with texture. The point is you're making a differentiation between the top and the bottom, cutting at your natural waist. So another way we're going to accentuate her waist is with the actual shape of the garment. You can see here just by me holding it that this has got quite a lot of movement to it and is cut to flow out, which just means that it's going to hit the most protruding part of her body, in this case her bust, and it's going to flow away because of the nature of this fabric. It's not very staticky, and so you're going to have a very smooth and flowy shape. Now, what we can do by bringing up the hem to her natural waist is we're going to create a break at her waist, making her waist look visually smaller than where the clothing piece is going to come off. By making your clothes come away from your body, what you were doing is visually making it appear that your waist or your body part underneath is visually smaller. It sounds backwards, I know, but basically if your clothing item doesn't touch your body, you're actually going to look a lot smaller in most cases. This isn't the same for everyone. You will have to try on some clothes in the mirror and see which ones you like. And if you don't trust your mirror, I'm suggesting you use a phone or take a photo of yourself. It's as simple as that. The way that these garments, though, currently fit her, even though she's of average height, she's got a shorter torso and longer legs. So these tops currently hit her at what would be called her high hip. And now her high hip is right where the volume of her hips are. So what we've done is created a line, a visual break over one of her widest parts, which is why she was uncomfortable in these pieces to begin with. So by bringing the eye up, what we're doing is we're highlighting a part of her body that she feels comfortable with, and we're actually going to more sort of camouflage our hip and our bottom half where she's less comfortable. When you are measuring for this, there's a couple of things I want you to note because we're about to do this part together. One, don't look down. So when you look down, your hem will get longer and you will make an inaccurate measurement. So stand up straight, shoulders back, or stand how you would naturally. And then fold the front of the garment until you're happy about where it's sitting with your favorite pair of pants, your favorite pair of bottoms of any kind. Normally, if we're going for the waist, we're looking for it to be kind of sitting over the waistband of your jeans or of that bottom that we're looking for. If you bring it up too high, you'll create a crop top. If you have it too low, we won't create the effect that we're looking for. So standing up, looking at yourself in the mirror, or having someone assist you, you can fold the front and then pin it where you want the fold to be. When you take it back to your cutting table, to your craft room, wherever it is that you're going to be doing this project, you're going to measure the amount that you folded it up. You're going to measure this amount that you folded it up, and you're going to create an average. Oftentimes, without a lot of practice, you will maybe have it be a little bit wonky. So go for the average and then add. It's always easier to cut it up. It is less easy to add length. Take it from someone who knows. So what you're going to do once you have the average of how long you want to take it up in the middle, and in this case on the sides, because you can see here that there's a bit of a dip, you're going to take your garment, you're going to fold it in half and over, so that we're working on what's called the wrong side or the inside of the fabric. And you're going to fold it in two. Now, the reason we're doing this is so that it is symmetrical when you cut it on both sides. So you're going to take your garment, you're going to fold it in half, and you are going to measure up from the bottom of the garment. So assuming that the garment is symmetrical already, if it is not symmetrical, then cut it flat. But assuming that the garment is symmetrical, we're going to fold it, sandwich it, and then taking chalk or a very light pencil, we're going to mark up from the bottom to where you want the new hem to be. Do not cut yet. So once you have your new line, then we're going to add at least a centimeter, if not a little bit more. And then we're going to add about 1 inch seam allowance. Seam allowance is going to, hem allowance is going to be what makes the new hem of your garment. If you were cutting up a t-shirt, you could get away with just cutting it raw and leaving it. But when you cut a t-shirt, it's still going to roll. So I suggest still leaving the 1 inch. And if you don't like it that long, then keep cutting up. But once you have your garment, you fold it in half, you've measured. This one is going to be coming up 4 inches in the middle and 1 inch on the side. Then you're going to pin your hem together, especially if you have a slippery fabric like this one, because you don't want them to move. And then you're going to use very sharp scissors and you're going to cut along the hem allowance. And then you have something that is going to look much shorter. So once you have your new hem, then you're going to either go to your sewing machine and you're going to hem it as you would naturally, or you're going to leave it raw and then you're done. I am not going to be a sewing channel, although I can sew, I can answer questions for you. I don't want to be the one who to DIY everything and to show you how to set up your sewing machine and things like that. There are amazing creators on this app. I have linked them below. If you need a full hem sewing tutorial, that is where you're going to find it. I've linked a bunch. Follow them. They're much more talented. No, much more patient than I ever would be when it comes to teaching sewing. But once you finish your hem, now remember to try it on each step in between, because there's nothing worse than finishing hem and then trying it on and being like, well, this is too long, and then you have to do it all again and unpick it all. Try it on, cut, try it on. Sew one part of it, try it on. Sew one part of it, steam. Remember that an iron is going to be your best friend. Do not use your iron on hot. If the sewing tutorials underneath are not saying it, or you skipped over it, I am telling you right now, do not do a super hot iron. So much of fast fashion has such a high content of plastic in it that it will melt. So please be cautious of that when you are pressing your garments. And on that scary note, now you have what's virtually a new top because you're going to wear it so much more because you like the new proportion of the piece. And the last thing I want to talk to you about is shoulder seams. Now this one is halfway through. It's a top that I'm altering for another client, and she has the same problem, shorter torso. A lot of women have this problem of having a shorter torso, and there's really no way to determine whether or not you have a shorter torso other than the fact that you notice that the length between your rib cage and your belly button is a little bit smaller than some of your friends. Or you notice things like this, where the line from your shoulder to your bust is seemingly too long almost all of the time. So if you're noticing this problem, either A, shop at stores for specifically designed for petite, who's shortened this length here, or you can bring up the shoulders like what I've done here. This isn't a more invasive alteration, so I strongly recommend finding a tailor near you. The easiest way to do that is to go on Google and simply type in tailor, seamstress, sewing near me, or insert your city and you'll find one. And just trust Google and the Google stars allotted to each one of them. I would always recommend going in with a top that you care less about first until you find one that you like. But basically, what I've done here is brought up her shoulder seam by about 2 inches and gone like this, and then sewn this way. The reason I'm doing that is because of where the bust line sits. So there's always going to be a bust line in your clothing, and sometimes it will be sitting too low, and you'll notice that you feel almost like you're hunched over every time you're wearing a certain top. Maybe the neckline's not sitting right, maybe the darts are a little bit lower than you think they should be, and if you pull up this way, then you'll be able to tell whether or not the bust line is in the right spot. It's not always the case, but for the most part, especially with petite or short-waisted women, this is a really big issue. One, again, that can be rectified by simply shopping with petite clothing in mind or doing this small alteration. So head to your closets, take a look around, try on a few things. The items that you wear the least are probably the ones where you should start with. And if you have any questions, of course, let me know and follow the sewing tips and tricks below.